In this video, we're going to learn how to solve quadratics by completing the square. This is based off an activity we did in class. What you learn from the activity will be referenced here in the video, so make sure you do the activity first and then watch the video. So your objective is that you can solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, and that you can recognize situations where completing the square would be a good option to use. Sometimes completing the square is not always the best. So there are 5 ways to solve a quadratic equation. You can always graph. Remember when we're graphing, we're finding the x-intercepts. Those are our solutions. We can use the square root method when there's no bx. We can factor if it's possible, and remember everything needs to equal 0 when we're factoring. We use the quadratic equation. You can always use the quadratic equation to solve. It's just very long. And again, it needs to equal 0 to use the quadratic equation. And then your last method, which is completing the square. To start completing the square, we need to get a equals 1. Everything today, a will equal 1, so we won't have to worry about this fact. And then it's easier if b is even. You can do it when b is odd. It's just a little rougher and might give you a headache. Alright, so when solving completing square, it is a kind of a step-by-step process, so I kind of outlined it for you. Write these steps down. You only have to write it down once. You don't have to write it down for every example. So we have our first example. So we can say this is example A. X squared plus 10x minus 24 equals 0. To use completing the square, first we need a equals 1, which it does. We need to move c to the other side, so it's ax squared plus bx equals c. So I have x squared plus 10x minus 24 equals 0. So I'm going to add 24 to the other side. So I have x squared plus 10x equals 24. So that step is done. Alright, so now we're going to complete the square. And the definition really of completing the square is that we want it so we can factor. That's the whole point of it. So the activity we did in class, I gave you a situation like this, where you had x squared plus 10x equals, and then I said I wanted to factor into where we get two factors the same. And through your discovery, we learned if you did the b divided by 2 squared every time, that's what you would add to both sides, or what would happen on both sides. So we're going to use the b divided by 2 squared. So our b is 10. We still have 24 over here. So I go 10 divided by 2 squared. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So I add 25 to one side, and to make my two sides balance, I have to do it to the other side. Alright, so the next step, we need to factor completely. Now this quadratic side is the side you're going to factor. So factoring, we have factors of 25 that add up to 10. That's x plus 5. X plus 5. If you did it right, the two sides should be the same, and it should be able to factor. Equals our total of 49. Right, well, that's x plus 5 squared equals 49. That's what we want. And now we're going to solve for x, and we're going to use our inverse operations of our square root, because we square. So I'm going to square root both sides. When you do one side, you have to do the other for equations. So you have x plus 5. Remember, when you take the square root of a number, it's plus or minus 49. Or, sorry, you have to actually square root it. Plus or minus 7. So what this means is we're going to have two answers. We're going to have x plus 5 equals 7, and x plus 5 equals negative 7. Minus 5, x equals 2, and minus 5 on this side, x equals negative 12. And again, you're always allowed to check your answers. You can plug x back into your original and to see if it comes out to equal 0. So example B. So again, we need a equals 1, which we already have. And everything on this slide in your problems in class will have a equals 1. When a is not 1, that would be your next video to watch. We need to move c to the other side, so I'm going to minus 2 over. So I have x squared minus 8x equals negative 2. Alright, so now we need to complete the square. We take our b, which is negative 8, divide by 2, and square it. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. So I have x squared minus 8x plus 16. And then I have negative 2 plus 16 on this side. Now I need to factor my quadratic side with the x squared. So that's x minus 4. X minus 4 equals 14. Two factors the same, we square it. Alright. And now we need to solve for x using our inverse operations. Square root both sides. We get x minus 4. We have to do the square root of 14. So here I'm only going to do 2 decimal places, so I'm going to go 3.74. Remember, plus or minus. We should get 2 answers if it's possible to solve. Just remember there's usually 2 x-intercepts. That's why. 3.74 x minus 4 equals 3.74 negative plus or minus, and then I just add 4 in both equations. So I get 7.74 as one answer. Add 4. X equals 0.26. Alright, so our last example. Again, they're all the same procedure, so it's really just kind of memorize the procedure for completing the square. Here we have a equals 1, and c is moved to the other side, which I already have. So I'm going to start off with x squared plus 2x equals 35. I didn't have to do anything with my first step. So I need to complete the square, so I take my b. So 2 divided by 2 squared is 1. So I have x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 35 plus 1. Factor equals 36. That'd be x plus 1. X plus 1 equals x plus 1 squared. If you want to skip this step and you know what to write to x plus 1 squared, which should happen every time if you do completing the square completely, go right ahead. Square root. Get x plus 1 equals plus or minus 6. Alright, then we need our 2 equations. X plus 1 equals the positive. X plus 1 equals the negative. Alright, so minus 1. X equals 5. Minus 1. X equals negative 7. And you're done. Alright, so that is it for the video. Again, make sure you remember all the steps. Make sure they're down in your notes. If you didn't write them down, I'd go back to just write them down quickly. You can remember when you're doing this in class. You'll have to kind of memorize. I won't be guiding you on your quizzes and your or actually quizzes for this unit. And be sure you only really want to use completed square if b is even and then a equals 1. Just reminders, do reflection so you get credit for watching this video.